This video is unlike most you'll find on this channel. Typically, I share remarkable stories, mysterious events, or unsolved tales, but this one is different. Today's story is about truth and the importance of setting the record straight. We're talking about the tragic loss of the USS Indianapolis, a story that's often buried under layers of myths, exaggerations, and misinformation. While its legacy has been depicted in books, films, and documentaries, many of those versions include dramatized or even outright false elements. My aim here is simple: to help uncover the real story beneath those myths. Consider this video both a continuation and correction, a necessary look into the misconceptions that have overshadowed one of the most devastating naval tragedies in American history. So how do we know these myths are false? Recent clarifications from retired Navy Captain William Toty, chairman of the USS Indianapolis Legacy Organization, have helped us distinguish between fiction and reality. Captain Tota has spent decades preserving the true legacy of the Indy and its crew, and much of what we thought we knew about the disaster turns out to be misleading or misrepresented, whether spread unintentionally through poorly researched books or crafted deliberately for dramatic effect. These myths have often overtaken the truth, sometimes even convincing the survivors themselves. Among the many false claims to stand out as particularly harmful and widely believed. Let's examine those first. One of the most persistent myths claims that Captain Charles B. McVay III, commander of the Indianapolis, asked the Navy for a destroyer escort on their journey from Guam to Leyte, and that his request was denied. The assumption here is heartbreaking. If the escort had been approved, perhaps the ship would not have been torpedoed. It's a compelling thought, so compelling that even many survivors have echoed it in interviews and speeches, but the facts tell a different story. Captain Tota clarified that during the official inquiry following the sinking, McVay himself stated under oath that he never requested an escort. Furthermore, McVay explained that requesting an escort wasn't even considered standard procedure for a commanding officer. It wasn't his call to make. Still, many sources, including the book Ordeal by Sea, which bears Captain Toty's name in its foreword, claim the request was made and denied. When asked about this contradiction, the Legacy Organization responded that Toty had no control over the content, as the book was reprinted after the original author's death. The passage likely repeated a myth already circulating in earlier publications. Why didn't McVay ask for an escort? Because by 1945, he had sailed unescorted many times through waters considered dangerous and had no reason to think this time would be any different. By that stage of the war, U.S. dominance in the Pacific had grown, and the idea of Japanese submarines still posing a significant threat was, at the time, not widely believed. Tragically, this assumption proved fatally wrong. What happened next, a chance encounter with Commander Makatsura Hashimoto of the Japanese submarine I-58, was a matter of terrible luck. Hashimoto's precision, combined with the deadly torpedo spread he launched, left the Indianapolis no chance. The second major myth is even more tragic. It claims that as the ship was sinking, its crew managed to transmit an SOS distress call, which was picked up by at least 3 different Navy stations and ignored. In many versions of the story, not only were these messages dismissed, but rescue boats were actually launched and then called back by commanding officers who refused to authorize the mission. The implication, hundreds of lives could have been saved if someone had simply listened. Let's unpack what we know. Yes, the crew did try to send an SOS, but according to Captain Toty, there is no evidence in Navy archives to confirm that any U.S. stations received the message, and yet several books, including In Harm's Way and Fatal Voyage, contain detailed, seemingly credible eyewitness reports stating otherwise. Names, dates, locations, and quotes all add weight to these claims. For instance, a sailor named Claire Young reportedly received the message and handed it to Commodore Jacob Jacobson, who dismissed it without a reply. Donald Allen, another Sailor claimed he witnessed 2 Navy tugboats launched in response to the SOS, only to be recalled hours later by Commodore Norman Gillette, Russell Hess, stationed on a separate landing craft, also claimed to receive and relay the SOS again with no action taken. These accounts seem incredibly specific. But when the Navy reviewed its radio logs from the time, no record of any SOS transmission was found. Not only were the logs intact, they were also complete with signatures and timestamps from dozens of watch officers, making the possibility of a massive cover-up virtually impossible. Even Claire Young's personal account, widely referenced and repeated, lacked verifiable support. While he did write letters and spoke to researchers, he never named the courier who handed him the message, nor the original operator who transcribed it. Could these men have genuinely misremembered? It's possible, given the trauma, stress, and passage of time. Even honest memories can become distorted. Captain Tote and his team ultimately concluded that, despite the emotional weight of these testimonies, they could not be treated as fact. Without supporting evidence, movies like Jaws and Men of Courage didn't help either. They dramatized or even completely fabricated parts of the story for entertainment. Jaws incorrectly claims no SOS was sent at all. Men of Courage repeats the myth that the messages were received and ignored. In these portrayals, real individuals, such as Commodores Jacobson and Gillette, are depicted as villains. And yet, according to the evidence, they may have been falsely accused for decades. Imagine carrying that stain on your legacy, only to have it disproven 80 years later. This last myth isn't nearly as dramatic as the others, but still worth correcting some. Accounts suggest that the crew of the Indianapolis witnessed the raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi during the Battle of Iwo Jima. According to deck logs, that wasn't the case. At the time of the iconic flag raising, the ship was over 200 miles away, undergoing resupply operations. The ship had indeed participated in the battle by providing offshore bombardment, but the flag moment, sadly, was not part of their experience. Captain Tote has addressed several other myths as well, ranging from small misunderstandings to major inaccuracies about Captain McVeigh's personal life and his eventual suicide. Among them, that McVeigh clutched a toy sailor when he died. Untrue. That he obsessively reread hate mail from grieving families. No evidence of this. And more. All of which can be found on the USS Indianapolis Legacy Organization's official page. It's a sobering reminder of how historical fiction, even when well-intentioned, can obscure truth. As the creator of this video, I'll admit this was an emotional script to research and write. I began this project thinking I already understood the Indianapolis story, only to find out that much of what I thought I knew wasn't true. In the middle of creating this episode, I also faced personal challenges, illness, a family loss, and delays, but I couldn't move forward with the story knowing what I had learned. I chose to dig deeper, correct the record, and present the most accurate version I could because these men, their sacrifice, and their families deserve nothing less. The real story of the USS Indianapolis, without the embellishments, is already powerful enough. A crew left vulnerable in a war zone. A ship sunk by enemy torpedoes, hundreds lost to the sea, sharks, and starvation. Survivors clinging to life for days before finally being spotted by chance. The tragedy is real. The horror is real, and the courage of those men is undeniable. The truth doesn't need to be dressed up. It needs to be protected. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support the ongoing efforts to preserve the legacy of the USS Indianapolis, please visit the Legacy Organization's page linked below.